Police meet locals to address brutality issues. Nurses call for rural medical centre to be restored. Melbourne woman escapes nightmare on highway.
He knows.
This is the National EMTV News with Turaho Moria.
Good evening and thanks for joining us for Sunday's news. NCD police today met with locals from Gabi village in Port Moresby to address ongoing issues related to the state of emergency. Since the start of the lockdown, police have had to deal with betel nut traders who continue to defy orders, which resulted in extreme measures taken against the perpetrators. In doing so, several people were alleged to have suffered some form of abuse at the hands of police. The meeting today was to bring peace among the community and the law.
In a statement from Acting Metropolitan Superintendent Chris Tamari, he said people involved in betel nut trade are not complying with SOE orders. He said Gabi village is known as a distribution point for boy smuggling. In an operation to confiscate the boy and disperse the crowds, a commotion occurred. The locals were said to have pelted the police with rocks, causing them to retaliate. In doing so, several people have suffered some form of abuse. According to a victim, he was beaten severely with a softball bat.
Another paman MAP baseball bat last paman. Come met all talking me lo tani me. Tani me 3 times straight paiti leg domi. Paiti leg domi mi feel se leg and buruke. So me had talk about.
When meeting with the people today, the victims were asked to give first-hand information on the confrontation. According to a victim, some cash and cargoes worth thousands of kina was confiscated and a female was stripped.
Nauga the Santino water making a minugupla. I'm worth of 4,000 kina mi buy more Santi where Miss order logo place. And Miss Loga the Santino mo policeman Kisimogeta.
So they were 3 of them. These are 3 people holding me, 1 person burukinus blow me, 1 person holding passing me on some paiti me pudan, bet blogane or put it head blow me 3 time. So me struggle to go out and me like crawl go outside and man pull trousers from burukim pants 1 time. So all kicking me go down me, we feel him unconscious na mistly.
The victims were also asked to describe the actions of the police involved and to identify them.
What them all make him lo place line too. All lo come lo way lo kisim lo osem lo movie man. All lo come lo way lo movie man. Or come lo way lo bagarami man street.
Those vehicles they got no number plates. Only the white 5 doors, but no blue police vehicle, just only the white ones.
The acting Metsup said these allegations will be investigated through established processes. The victims were asked to compile their statements and lodge them with the Internal Affairs Directorate so that formal investigations can be made. He said members of the police found to have broken the law will be dealt with. So far, 26 people involved in this riot against the police have been arrested and are facing various charges relating to breaches of SOE orders. 8 of them were caught at sea by members of the water police. The acting Metsup said such rebellious activities is caused by the attractive cash income generated by the boy trade. He said such reckless behaviors can cause violence, posing a risk to the lives of innocent civilians. Rayon Lakingu National, EMTV News.
Nursing officers in Morehead Station in Western Province are calling on their local member for South Fly District, Seki Agisa, to help restore the only medical centre. The medical centre has been neglected for almost a decade. No medical support is visible in this remote part of the country that is closer to Indonesia, where there are over 10,000 confirmed cases and 831 deaths. Western Province reportedly has positive 3 cases, but no reports of community transmission thus far. Godwin Eki reports.
As part of PNGDF's border patrol trips, a 45-minute trip on helicopter to Southfly brought us to Morehead Station. Once on the ground, The quiet yet peaceful place didn't seem to have many people. But after meeting 2 local nursing officers, I was told that awareness of COVID-19 was done on foot, but no personal protective equipments were used to carry out the awareness. Nursing officer in charge, Guma Kalia, says the health center in Moorhead Station has been neglected for 10 years, and since then, no tangible developments and help has come from the government to restore health facilities in Moorhead.
The health facility at the moment it's run down, and we were advised that it is already been condemned, but because we are local officers, we continue to help patients when they come here.
She says with COVID-19 in our midst, fear has turned people away, while those that need medical support are being assisted from staff houses. She is afraid with the school starting soon. Many of the children attending schools in Moorhead are from border villages. When asked about other government services, there is no policing on the ground. There are teachers ready to get back to school. And while there is only 6 medical officers on the ground, health facilities are a big problem and need urgent attention. She says one thing the government, especially the member for Southfly, needs to do is provide food for public servants on the ground as well as for the people of Moorhead. She also added that health officers need personal protective equipments. With the health center rundown and not having proper PPEs, service is provided from the staff housing where patients are to stand on the ground and communicate with the health worker.
Whoever is on duty, the patients come and wait in front of the staff's house, and then we give medicines from on the roadside.
Godwin Eki, National EMTV News, Kiunga.
With the impacts of COVID-19 taking its toll on the operation of tertiary institutions, the University of PNG has a plan in place to ensure they complete this academic year successfully. Vice-Chancellor Frank Griffin said the academic plan for this year has been rescheduled, with study breaks and semester breaks compressed. The Vice-Chancellor further adding that staff and students travelling in from outside centres will be tested and quarantined.
Speaking to the media recently, the Vice-Chancellor said its schools have rescheduled their programs for the year. He said due to the shutdown, they have lost almost 6 weeks. With the programs rescheduled, study breaks and semester breaks have been compressed, and the academic year is likely to end in November or December.
Traditionally, we usually finished about October. So it's highly likely that this year's academic year could run into November, possibly December. But that is something that the schools will now have to go back and repackage what they need to offer for the remainder of this semester and going into second semester.
With the resumption of classes, staff and students will be travelling in from outside centres. The Vice-Chancellor said there will be checkpoints established in certain locations. Students and staff will be tested by the medical staff and quarantined.
In the event that we find that somebody has an elevated temperature, then the normal protocols of how to administer them through a medical process will then be applied to look after them.
A graduation ceremony for students who have completed their studies is also an option that they will have to consider. The Vice-Chancellor says they will try their best to organize a graduation ceremony taking into consideration the social distancing requirements.
It's going to be a challenging one, but we will try our best to organize one and exercise physical distancing as the main cause that we'll need to drive how we end up with a graduation ceremony, if it does happen.
To ensure social distancing and other health requirements are followed while attending to academic activities, the university will be using the online platform. However, this also comes with its own challenges and consequences. According to Chancellor Robert Igara, this will be a different experience for the students, and staff will have to learn more about the different methods of teaching online.
And the other side of university education is that you come to campus and you interact with other people, other students from different parts of the country, as well as academics, and it's an environment that is unique. So, when we are talking about shifting, how we reposition the university, how do you actually ensure that you don't lose the essence of an environment that is really conducive?
But despite these challenges, the university is committed to ensure they achieve their core mission of providing quality education. Rayon Lakingu, National, EMTV News.
Disability Sector Coalition Rep Ben Theodore wants the media to assist people with disabilities by connecting them with programs that are in place. This question was posed to journalists during a recent media briefing on the difficulties PWDs are facing during this global pandemic. Mr. Theodore says the issue with awareness is about journalists talking on our behalf, and if given at least 20 minutes on air, that will make a big impact on viewers and other PWDs.
Under COVID-19 now, there's no specific messages for persons with disabilities. No one is talking about them. A whole lot of messages that are just streaming through slowly under this structured UN, like protection, WAS, and all of this, and they are yet to be disseminated appropriately. Right? So this is the time for you and me to intervene to relay the right message. The first message is Toksabelo man merilo peles lo wokim garden, so that our persons with disabilities can eat. Even if they get sick, they might not get sick if they eat popo. You need to get them to, those messages too. You know, and they can practice social distancing in the gardens. So we want to be part of your programs.
As business houses, organizations and individuals continue to give towards supporting the government's food mobilization and distribution initiative, City Pharmacy Limited Group says they will continue to support charities and farmers. Group Managing Director Mahesh Patel says from a corporate perspective, because of the current economic situation, a lot of companies are pulling back from their commitments. He said it's important for all corporate houses to carry on the charity work that everyone has been doing over the years.
The church group would know there's a saying in the Bible to say, if a man's hungry, don't give him a fish, teach him how to fish. So the governor you mentioned about, the prime ministers in your pledge to help farmers, and this is an open invitation to all the farmers. You must grow them, go back to the fields, work, and we will support you in buying the produce. The most difficult thing in Papua New Guinea at the moment, not only in Port Moresby but across the nation, is getting the produce from the farm to the plate. So what we need is to all work together, set up aggregation points. This is where we need support from the authorities with the cross-border issues. I know health is important, but people's livelihood and people's hunger and well-being is important as well. So there needs to be a balance of health versus upkeep, because people will be hungry, poverty will be there, sickness will start again. So to all the farmers, we are there to support you. Keep growing, and we're here to stay.
The impact of the global pandemic in Brazil, South Africa and the United States, and a lucky escape for a woman trapped in her moving vehicle. Those stories when we come back. Brazil is facing a desperate and dire situation. The country is struggling to bury more than 5,000 who have died, and their president's response was, so what?
In Brazil, the coronavirus has carved its terrible marks upon the earth. They've buried hundreds upon hundreds here, and they're ready for thousands more. This is just one cemetery where they're filling the graves as fast as they can dig them. Still, not fast enough. Bodies lie on hospital trolleys in the city of Manaus in the north, while doctors tell us the health system across the country is collapsing.
People are being put on chairs because we don't have beds anymore.
Yet the response of Brazil's president to this national tragedy? So what? I can't do miracles, he says. To many of his countrymen, Jair Bolsonaro has appeared callous and uncaring, calling coronavirus a mild flu and encouraging people back to work. In Rio, there's anguish at the funeral of nurse Ana Maria dos Santos, one of many healthcare workers to die amid complaints of the lack of safety equipment. While for millions in the teeming favelas, where keeping a safe distance is never possible, there's no healthcare system at all. But it's a mass graves amid the rainforests of the Amazon, which have shocked Brazil most. The region's governor has issued an angry appeal for international help.
Where is Leonardo DiCaprio? Where is Maradona? Where is the actors and the actresses? They appear only when we have a problem with the forest. Where is everybody in the moment where we most need them?
Ultimately, COVID-19 might prove fatal to Bolsonaro's presidency. But for now, Brazil has more urgent concerns: to bury its dead.
The global pandemic is no more obvious than in Africa. Neither a good place for the hungry, the virus has made the situation much worse.
At one point during the day, the line of people awaiting a food handout stretched 2.5 miles. But the length of the queue wasn't the only shock. The other was where it formed, for this is just outside Johannesburg, the richest city in Africa. These pictures show Kenyans so hungry they couldn't wait, and so they stampeded. Such was their fear of missing out on food being distributed. The UN says 5 African countries are at risk of famines of biblical proportions, but neither Kenya nor South Africa are among them. South Sudan is. Already cursed by war, climate change and a dire economy, the country is home to 1.7 million displaced people living in camps. Most have to work to eat, but because of coronavirus, they're doing less of both. Because of the movement restrictions, we can't leave the camp to work, said this woman. We're running out of food and medicine and hope aid organizations will rescue us. The quarantine and a broken food supply chain complete a perfect storm of man-made and natural disasters that condemn perhaps millions to starvation.
The bank estimate is that in 2020, between 40 and 60 million people will be pushed into extreme poverty.
Coronavirus isn't the only airborne pestilence that threatens the Horn of Africa. A second plague of crop-eating locusts is now on the horizon, and it's set to be much bigger and more ravenous than before.
Whilst the world is watching COVID-19, a hunger crisis is building every day, one that could see more than 250 million people pushed to the brink of starvation.
The UN is calling for huge donations, but despite the dire predictions, the economic predicament of even the richest nations means there's rarely been a worse time to ask.
In the United States, many say life is cautiously coming back amidst concerns. Some of them are going by too far, too fast. More than 30 states, over half of the country, are now easing coronavirus restrictions to some degree.
Picture-perfect weather drew crowds onto the National Mall in Washington, even though officials asked people not to cluster. They were watching a military flyover, honouring healthcare workers and first responders. New York's Central Park was also busy. The city's mayor told CNN that for the most part, New Yorkers are complying.
But families have been doing that the right way, and people are overwhelmingly abiding by that social distancing. More and more people putting on the face coverings. We're giving them out for free today all over the city to make it easier for people. So New Yorkers have been pretty amazing in following rules in a place where it's tough.
Meantime, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced that for the first time ever, the subway in the city that famously never sleeps will shut down each night for 5 hours for deep cleaning. And protests erupted after California's governor ordered some beaches closed. The US has about 1/3 of the total 3.4 million coronavirus cases in the world, with more than 66,000 deaths. In the UK, more than 600 people have died in the past day alone. And now the UK could pass Italy for the most coronavirus deaths in Europe. In Spain, after 7 weeks of lockdown, people were allowed to go out for some fresh air on Saturday. And in China, where the virus is believed to have originated and where restrictions are slowly being lifted, Shanghai reports 1 million visitors over the first 2 days of the May Day holiday. Well, one of the hardest hit sectors of the US economy is retail, and as states are beginning to open up, so are shopping malls. The largest mall operator in the US says more than 24 of its locations reopened on Friday across 8 states, and 5 more in Georgia are set to open on Monday. CNN's Natasha Chen spoke to people there about shopping in the era of social distancing.
In Georgia, the state that has taken the most aggressive measures to reopen the economy, the new month brought with it an entirely new place to get out of the house, the mall.
First of all, it's been scary at the first time when we heard about it, but also exciting for our tenants to be able to open back up.
The state's shelter-in-place order officially expired Thursday night for most Georgians, though Governor Brian Kemp extended the order for the elderly and vulnerable populations to shelter in place through mid-June. Still, his executive order allowed retail stores to open back up on Friday, about a week after restaurants, barbershops, and even tattoo parlors. At Avalon, an upscale outdoor mall in Atlanta's suburbs, management readied the grounds for shopping in the socially distant era.
All of the common area furniture have been placed 6 feet apart.
And the walkways are one way only. But only a fifth of about 100 shops at Avalon were open, and many of those were either curbside pickup or by appointment only. Altered State, a women's clothing store, was one of the few that had its doors open.
And of course, there always is like that fear of just like maybe that one person will walk in who has it, but we are also taking really good precautions to just make sure that that doesn't happen, and have a lot of sterilizing everything. You know, we have the option to wear masks. We wear gloves at the cash wrap just to make sure, you know, we're not touching anything.
New protocols include steaming every article of clothing that a customer tries on and regularly disinfecting the fitting rooms. And because only 10 people, including employees, are allowed inside at any time, there was a line of customers waiting outside. We found Kate Martin at the end of that line.
I'm a nurse, so instinctively I think that, like, it's still too contagious. It's a very contagious disease, so I still think it might be a little too soon to come back out and be this close together. So we'll see.
But you're here.
I am.
She's wearing a mask, which the mall is also giving to its customers, but still not everyone is.
They should be, but they don't take it seriously.
The retired nurse had a message for the young and the maskless who could have been unknowingly passing it to more vulnerable populations.
You know, you might not get as sick, but they will. And they will get it from you. Do it for your grandmother.
Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has denied sexually assaulting a former staff member almost 3 decades ago. Tara Reid managed the intern program at Biden's office in 1993 and alleged the assault took place when the two were in an empty corridor.
In his first public remarks since the allegations surfaced 37 days ago, Joe Biden explicitly denied the assault.
I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
Tara Reid, who was a 28-year-old staffer in Biden's Senate office back in 1993, says he assaulted her in a Capitol Hill hallway.
I remember his hands underneath my blouse and underneath my skirt, and his fingers penetrating me.
Reid says she later complained to the Senate Personnel Office, but that her complaint didn't mention sexual assault. Today, Biden called for the release of any record of Reid's complaint.
If it's there, put it out, but I've never seen it.
Senate personnel records are managed by the Secretary of the Senate, who didn't respond to requests for comment. Some have questioned whether there's a mention of Reid in Biden's personal Senate papers housed at the University of Delaware. Biden insists there isn't, and said he doesn't want them released yet because they're mostly political.
All of that to be fodder in a campaign at this time, I don't know of anybody who's done anything like that.
Last year, Reid recounted what she considered to be inappropriate touching by Biden. In March, she made the more serious allegation of assault. Today, Biden did not directly answer if he remembered her.
Do you remember her?
I don't remember any type of complaint she may have made. It was 27 years ago.
President Trump, who's been accused by more than a dozen women of sexual misconduct, said he found Reid to be credible.
But I would just say to Joe Biden, just go out and fight it. It's one of those things.
Reid, who supported Bernie Sanders, tells CBS News she didn't speak out sooner, like when Biden was vice president, because she had a younger daughter at the time. But she says she's speaking out now because, quote, I wanted to show my daughter you can stand up to power.
A Melbourne woman has escaped a nightmare confrontation with the truck, which trapped her in her car sideways, then pushed her along for more than a kilometre. Witnesses say the truck driver didn't even seem to know the car was there.
I don't think he knows. Hell.
Inside this car is a woman trapped and screaming.
He's on the freeway.
I hear that and I'm not worried about it. Beeping the horn in terror as other horrified drivers sound theirs. The truck driver appears to have no idea he's pushing a small car at 80 kilometres an hour.
It was quite a big truck and it was quite high and it was a little car and it may have been, right underneath his bonnet. So I don't believe that, he saw what was going on.
The truckie only slowing down when the car in front flashed its hazard lights.
Quite scary, especially to see at 7 o'clock in the morning.
The driver posted an emotional message on social media saying, I was travelling in the left lane minding my own business when the truck veered into my lane and clipped my front quarter panel and spun me in front of him. Clearly shaken, Kelly Bubeck went on. I was hanging onto my steering wheel hard left and accelerating so the truck did not pull me under. Incredibly, the driver of the car wasn't hurt. Police have now interviewed everyone involved in the crash and at this stage won't press any charges.
Still to come on National EMTV News, Hong Kong a year on from the violent protests over amendments to its constitution. Last year, there were widespread protests in the streets of Hong Kong, but in 2020, pro-democracy activists are now fighting on new fronts. Opposition politicians say Beijing is ramping up its efforts to try and control the city, and there have been several high-profile arrests and a battle over the implementation of the city's constitution.
Hong Kong's Parliament's House Committee has for the last 6 months been the site of a prolonged filibustering saga. Pro-democracy lawmakers are accused of obstructing and stalling the election of a House Committee chair. That prompted Beijing's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office and the China Liaison Office in Hong Kong to launch a rare attack against the city's opposition lawmakers earlier this month, saying their delay tactics could amount to misconduct while in public office. A row then erupted over whether the statement amounted to interference from Beijing, which would contravene Hong Kong's basic law, the mini-constitution that defines the city's status.
Expansion of the authority of the liaison office in Hong Kong acts as a proof to the international community to say that the degree of autonomy in Hong Kong has been dwindled.
That same day, Reuters published claims that Hong Kong's prized judicial independence had come under threat from Beijing, citing 3 senior judges. Hong Kong's Chief Justice, Geoffrey Ma, later denied that he personally had ever felt pressure from the central government. Soon after, on April 20, the China Liaison Office used a constitutional technicality to declare it was not restricted by Article 22 of Hong Kong's Basic Law. The article forbids any departments of the Central People's Government from interfering in the internal affairs of Hong Kong. Instead, the office said it was set up by the central government, not its departments.
The 2 offices that represent the mainland Chinese government in Hong Kong have essentially said, you know what? We're actually going to insert ourselves into Hong Kong affairs.
The confusing legal arguments seem to have even the city's government unsure how to respond. But after a series of muddled clarifications, eventually the city's chief executive, Carrie Lam, fully endorsed the liaison officer's statement.
It is erroneous to treat the liaison office of the Central People's Government
as an office set up by one of the departments of the central government, because the liaison office is representing the Central People's Government to oversee matters of Hong Kong.
I mean, it's all up to their interpretation these days. It seems that as long as they say something, it's the law. It's the law a la China. That's what's really scary.
Then came the arrests of 15 high-profile pro-democracy advocates, allegedly for their role in protests and unrest last year.
我為我所作所為，一啲都冇後悔。
The arrests and Beijing's more assertive tone indicate legislative elections slated for September may be on its mind. Pro-Beijing lawmakers have hinted they may seek to invoke Article 79 of the Basic Law, which enables the President of the Legislative Council to disqualify a lawmaker condemned for misbehaviour or a breach of oath by a vote of 2/3 of council members. A precedent already set in 2016 when the council removed some pro-democracy lawmakers who protested during their oaths.
They're very worried about the democratic goal of Hong Kong, of claiming legislative majority in the September Legislative Council elections.
I think the Hong Kong authorities in particular, because it's looking generally pretty good for the democratic factions or parties, I think local authorities are interested in trying to derail that process.
Even more worrying for democracy activists has been the resurrection of talk over implementing Article 23 of Hong Kong's Basic Law. The article requires the Hong Kong government to enact laws to prohibit acts of treason, secession, sedition and subversion against Beijing. Mass protests in 2003 stopped an attempt then to bring in wide-ranging national security laws under Article 23.
But I do think that Beijing is testing a little bit what sort of a reaction these developments will provoke. There's also the possibility that they're trying to provoke people to come back out onto the streets in Hong Kong, which could, among other things, give them a pretext to do things like invoke Article 23.
Despite criticism from pro-democracy activists, Hong Kong's government insists the principle of one country, two systems remains as strong as ever. They told the ABC Hong Kong's capitalist system, its free economy and trusted legal system remain as robust as ever, and that Hong Kong residents continue to enjoy a wide array of freedoms, including freedom of speech, of the press, of assembly and of demonstration. The COVID-19 pandemic, coupled with a disastrous 12 months for the city's economy, are adding to Hong Kong's woes. But the protest movement seems likely to endure through both.
Once this pandemic is over, Hong Kong will be back to the protest days, and it's very worrying. But then you can tell the young people's antipathy, in particular, against the government is so deeply rooted. It's not going away anytime soon. It's going to last for years, if not for one whole generation.
True Guy Sports is next. Phyllis Sukina joins us at the sports desk.
Thank you, Turaho. True Guy Sports is next. PNG football rep Alwyn Comalong joins Leigh City FC, and Liverpool could be denied the chance of taking out the English Premier League. Details after the break.
True Guy Sports.
With the Kumul Petroleum National Soccer League sidelined due to the state of emergency imposed by the national government in light of COVID-19, the competition is expected to return in June. For Leigh-based franchise Leigh City FC, there is some good news. It is finally confirmed that Alwyn Comalong has signed with the Leigh City franchise. The Kumul Petroleum National Soccer League competition is in recess due to the government's directives for a state of emergency in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. After 10 rounds of competition, the semi-professional soccer competition went into lockdown. Just before the lockdown, there were a few changes that happened in the competition. The leaders in the competition, Hekari United, had lost their position in the top of the ladder after losing to last place team Star Mountain FC. This allowed for new team VTS United to take over the lead. Hekari United, who had been in first place, moved to third position on the ladder. Currently in second place is Leigh City FC. Leigh City are the defending champions, but after their OFC championship campaign, a few changes was made with the replacement of Premiership winning coach Peter Gunemba and a few players walking away from their contracts. But some good news this week after Leigh City made the announcement before the Oceania Club Championships. Finally, Alwyn Comalong, PNG men's national team defender, confirmed on his official Facebook page that he has finally signed with the Leigh City franchise. Seen in this photo is Alwyn and Leigh City franchise owner Ian Chow. Alwyn Comalong wrote on his official Facebook page, "Glad to finally put pen to paper at Leigh City FC. Thank you to Ian Chow for the opportunity to play again. Looking forward to the challenge once the NSL gets going again." To football overseas, Liverpool could be denied the chance to end its 30-year drought in front of a home crowd at Anfield Stadium.
Neutral venues are being touted the key to getting the current Premier League season back up and running. Clubs met with officials via video conference overnight to discuss resuming games from behind closed doors at up to 10 approved venues. Among the proposed venues are West Ham's London Stadium, Arsenal's Emirates Stadium and Manchester City's Etihad Stadium.
Still ahead in Trukai Sports, more sporting bodies aiming to restart their season after lockdown.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back. Sports organizations are daring to dream outside their COVID-19 bubbles, announcing restart dates and making plans for returning to schedule. Italy's footballers will soon be allowed to train, but there are some sports that should never shut down.
Permission to start training again in Italy's Serie A has come from the top. The Prime Minister says individuals can do so from May the 4th, by which time the league would have been suspended for 2 months. Team practice can resume May the 18th, and only if this goes ahead safely will authorities consider allowing the championship to return. Due to coronavirus closures for the NBA, players have been training through Zoom. Not ideal, but there are reportedly plans to reopen practice facilities for individual workouts. That's for players in cities that have loosened stay-at-home orders.
Exultant managed to get rid of time warp.
There have been some sports which have carried on, albeit without spectators, and others which are returning after more than a month off, without crowds to start with.
Oh, heads up for a straightaway. Big problems, big problems.
Also, those which have garnered more attention than usual due to sports-deprived fans. The only live cricket matches with players and spectators were held in Vanuatu, with the small Pacific nation yet to report any cases of COVID-19.
Over 350,000 views, which is nearly 100,000 more people in the whole of Vanuatu's population.
Nicaragua is one of the few nations where sporting activity with spectators, including baseball, soccer and boxing, has not stopped, but it's not without precautions.
At the entrance, they gave us face masks and then they clean your shoes and wash your hands and check the temperature of the assistants. I think they're controlling this situation so we don't get COVID-19.
Top tennis professionals remain pessimistic their sport will return anytime soon. Rafa Nadal points out that to compete, players need to travel every week to stay in hotels, all not possible under coronavirus restrictions in many countries.
To basketball, Sean Marks and his Brooklyn Nets are preparing as if the NBA draft will go ahead, despite reports it's in jeopardy due to the coronavirus.
Officials have suspended the draft lottery, which determines the order which clubs select players, with the future of the actual draft in June also up in the air. Not that New Zealander Marks is thinking that way.
Through this, I'm going to prepare that we're going to play. I'm going to prepare that we'll have a draft and a free agency and we'll continue the season and so forth, because I do think the alternative to that could lead you down a rabbit hole.
In an attempt to start the season as soon as possible, the NBA is considering a single venue for all games, with Disney World in Florida emerging as a contender alongside Las Vegas and Los Angeles.
And Trukai Sports ends on that note. Toraho will be back with the weather forecast for the next 24 hours. Stay tuned.
Sports. True Kai Sports.
This weather update is proudly brought to you by Money Plus. With you always.
Weather forecast for the afternoon and tonight. Southern region mostly fine, then possible afternoon showers developing in Port Moresby. Daru and Alotau partly cloudy with a shower or two. Kerma mostly fine although cloudy and fine in Popondetta. In the Momasa region, Ley and Wewak mostly fine, fine in Medang, and in Vanimo partly cloudy with possible afternoon showers. New Guinea Islands, Lorengau partly cloudy with a few afternoon showers. Kavieng and Buka cloudy with rain showers. Kokopo and Rabaul cloudy with a shower or two. And Kimbe mostly fine, then becoming cloudy with possible afternoon showers. The Highlands, Mount Hagen mostly fine, then possible afternoon showers. Goroka and Kondiawa mostly fine. Mendi and Wabeg mostly fine, then becoming cloudy with possible afternoon showers. Forecast for small ships, there is renewal strong wind warning for all coastal waters, southern PNG Indonesian border to the Torres Strait Islands and western Coral Sea. Strong southeast winds of 25 to 33 knots are expected to continue for the next 24 hours. All small crafts and boats are advised to take necessary precautions before going out to sea. Forecast for small crafts within the coastal waters of Papua New Guinea for the next 24 hours. Waters of southern PNG Indonesia border to Daru Sea 0.5 to 1.5 meters. Waters of Gulf of Papua to Kerma, to Yule Island, to Hood Point and Samurai Island 0.5 to 1.3 meters. Waters of Samurai Island and eastern and western Milne Bay Islands with waters of East Cape to Cape Vogel to Finschhafen with waters of Finschhafen through to Vitius Dampier Straits to Siasi Island to Long Island with waters of Long Island to Medang to Bogia Wewak and to Aitape to northern PNG Indonesia border with waters of Manus and its western group of islands and western waters of New Ireland and Bougainville and with waters of East and West New Britain. Seas 0.5 to a meter. And the ocean forecast for PNG areas, Coral Sea moderate to fresh with southeast winds at 15 to 25 knots, increasing to 33 knots. Solomon Sea slight with east to northeasterly winds at 10 to 15 knots. Bismarck Sea smooth with light northwesterlies, tending to southwest winds at 5 to 10 knots. And the Pacific Ocean seas slight with east to southeast winds at 10 to 15 knots.
The weather update was proudly brought to you by Money Plus. With you always.
That's the way it is this Sunday, the 3rd of May 2020. On behalf of the news team, pleasant viewing. Good night.